Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer behind the YouTube channel Nonconformist Conscience and also the webpage nonconformistconscience.com. This week, we are in a powerful evolutionary gate or a portal in time where we can really have a lot of growth happen. And it revolves around remaining autonomous while still creating balance and harmony within our relationships. Venus is retrograde this week and for the next 6 weeks, and is in the sign of Leo, and is the ruler of the South Node in Libra, which Pluto is square to. And Pluto is in a T-square to both the South Node and the North Node. But we're really needing to focus on the South Node in Libra in order to pull in that North Node and to have a full integration. So I really want to break this week down for all of us, since we are in powerful times. Pretty much every astrologer I know has been talking about this for this year, and there is good reason for that. Anytime that Pluto squares the nodes, we know, and it's exact, like what is going on this week, the 24th, the 26th, and the 28th. There is a chance for all of us to need to really focus on what, in this case, Pluto is wanting us to do on a soul evolutionary level, and to focus on that South Node in Libra, because it was the last lunar node that Pluto was conjunct with. Before I really get into everything, because there's a lot for this week, I wanted to share a little story about me having dinner with girlfriends this weekend. And I wrote about it a little bit in the weekly forecast, and so I will post the link to that, the written report, in the description below. But I have this friend who has a lot of Aquarius in the 7th house, and she is really into quantum physics, really science-based, and is just an extremely intelligent woman. But we were talking about our personal relationships and what's going on for all of us evolutionary wise, and she used the analogy of the bell curve, which is a theory that we've all kind of heard about, but it's about the distribution of patterns and weighing the outcomes so that we can meet in the center at the top of the bell curve. And she says that she thinks about life as kind of standing on the edge of chaos, which is at the top of the bell curve. And she says that she imagines herself dancing on it to try to remain in harmony and in balance with life, which definitely speaks to the South Node in Libra, which is about us learning to harmonize and learning how to balance. And it really focuses and highlights on where imbalances have been created. And it's really amazing that Pluto is square this nodal axis, with the resolution or the center of focus being the South Node, because we're talking about cardinal energies, which is very much 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's about initiating a brand new cycle, but in order to do that, we have to reflect on the past, and that's why it can feel like we're taking a step back into evolution and really creating involution, which is a part of evolution. We learn, we grow, we're evolving, and then another wave comes on top of us of the same dynamics that we've been integrating and working on, right? We've all experienced this. This is kind of a universal experience. We feel like we're trucking along, that we've got this, and all of a sudden this same dynamic comes up, and true Plutonian karmic evolutionary ways. And it's mutated, Pluto, Scorpio. And so we're having to learn how to integrate the same dynamic in a different way so that full evolution can take place, so that a full growth can take place. And my friend was talking about how living on the edge of chaos is on, if the bell is shaped like this, and on one side, if you tip too far this way, chaos can ensue, and if you tip too far this way, chaos can ensue. And so she likes to imagine herself like dancing on the top of the bell curve. And I just thought it was such a beautiful way to express Pluto squaring this South Node in Libra. And it's also why I titled this week's astrological forecast, Dancing on the Bell Curve of Evolution. Because for a lot of us right now, we are going to be understanding where imbalances have been perpetuated or created within our relationships. And within the archetype of Libra, the South Node at 29 degrees. So it's like at 29 degrees, which is also where the South Node of Libra's ruler, Venus, stationed retrograde at. This is like where culmination is wanting to happen in order for this new cardinal cycle, brand new evolutionary cycle to start. But we have to focus and reflect, Capricorn, reflect, Pluto and Capricorn, on the dynamics that are resurfacing through all of these retrogrades that are happening right now. And retrogrades symbolize relive, redo in order to resolve, to have a resolution in order for evolutionary growth to continue to move. And so we are at this crossroads of needing to finesse and learn how to harmonize in life and in our partnerships, whether they be friends, family, work, or intimate other. Libra is really not just about romantic partnerships. It is about all of our one-on-one relationships that we have, whereas Aquarius can be like our group of friends or our community. Libra can be a friend in that group or a family member. So it's not a unit of people, it is more of our close one-on-one relationships. And with Pluto square this node in the sign of Libra with its ruler retrograde as well, we are really revisiting a lot of dynamics that we're needing to resolve right now on an evolutionary level, pertaining to not only our relationship with other, but with Venus ruling the South Node, it's also our relationship to ourselves. How do we harmonize and stay in balance with ourselves? How do we not lose sight of ourselves? How do we not abandon ourselves in relationships? How do we, Pluto and Capricorn, stay autonomous and sovereign to our own state of becoming and being within partnerships? And so a lot of people are wanting to learn these lessons of how to still be sovereign and autonomous while being in relationships. So this also means that we're looking at codependency, enmeshment, or any type of imbalance created within a variety of our relationships. And we're needing to all learn how to dance on the top of the bell curve instead of teetering to one side too much, or chaos can ensue. And what I mean by chaos is it can be internal friction. It doesn't have to be crisis. For some this week, crisis is being initiated as a way to rebalance and realign them, because that is what happens with crisis oftentimes, because it gets us to ask, why is this happening? What is going on? What do I need to do differently? So if you're someone who's experiencing crisis in their relationships, or you're at this crossroads of needing to make a choice, this is this week that really can be bringing this to the full front and being confronted with it. So that way we can learn and manifest wisdom around creating balance and harmony within our lives and within our personal and interpersonal relationships right now. So with Pluto in Capricorn retrograde, a lot of the things that we have suppressed dealing with these dynamics can be surfacing, especially our emotions revolving around our relationships, and dynamics of where we felt oppressed in our relationships can be surfacing as a way for us to be confronted with the imbalances. So that way we can, in true Capricorn fashion, master taking responsibility for self, and also to be able to be one's own authority, no matter if you're in any type of relationship. It's about learning how to not lose sight of oneself. Because in the sign of Libra, we can experience self-abandonment, or the self-abandonment cycle of where we are wanting to get along, and really we're not being our own authority because we're just going with the flow, because we're looking at, with Pluto, also what constitutes our inner security. It's about what's known and familiar, and the need to look at our conditioned patterns where we recycle instances where we could be abandoning ourselves or becoming an invested in relationships that are not based within equality. And when we self-abandon, we have a phenomenon of where we are getting along to get along. So we're abandoning our values. This is Venus, Libra, Taurus dynamics. And then we can feel anger and resentment. And then we try to atone for this. And then what ends up happening is we then feel guilty for being angry. So we feel like we need to atone or placate. And then the whole cycle just starts all over. And so really no change or growth is happening because we're perpetuating something like this. This can be one of the dynamics that comes up for some this week. Another dynamic that can be coming up is understanding that the people that we have relationships with are really not in alignment with our values, or we're investing energy into people who are not reciprocating that. Because within Libra, this is about equality and giving and sharing, but it can also be about our projected expectations of relationships. And this week speaks to learning about not being attached to an outcome or an expectation, and only being attached to the truth of what is occurring. So this is seen within the yod that is happening between Neptune, the South Node in Libra, and also Venus retrograde. And so when we're experiencing these dynamics of where we're learning how to give and how to receive, and within Libra as well, being able to listen to another's point of view of where they're coming from, we can also experience lessons in the supreme form of giving to counteract any type of imbalances that are being created within our relationships with others. And Neptune in a yod with Venus in the South Node really speaks to this dynamic, and it pulls in Pluto squaring this node as a way to recover our natural authority and sovereignty and autonomy. And so what this can look like is, for some, learning lessons on really not only being able to listen to someone, but to hear what they're actually asking for through not only their actions that are being presented, but also the content of their words, instead of projecting our experience onto them or our expectation or projecting what we think that they need. This week is really about listening to what is really needed. So I can give a personal experience about this. Just to demonstrate this, I was in this relationship with someone who really, I've experienced this with family and in intimate relationships, and actually also friendships, where I would abandon myself. And I had to learn the lesson of supreme giving, which is there's a responsibility of appearing not to give sometimes, because if you really truly love someone, it's not about trying to control the outcome. It is about, I love you and I want for you what I want for myself. And so that pulls in this Libra dynamic of, equality, giving and sharing. And within that, I've had these relationships where I have had to really listen to what is happening and to only be attached with the truth. That way I could make a choice that felt like I could be in an integrity with myself and remain autonomous. And so what that meant for me on a personal level, and could be happening for quite a few people this week, is that we're being confronted with the fact that maybe we've grown apart. Maybe one person is at a different evolutionary stage than the other. Maybe our values aren't aligned. And so one person is only able to hear what they want to hear. So there can be these dynamics of your feelings are wrong and mine are right, which that creates imbalances, because it's really not about honoring someone else's feelings. It's about projecting how we think that they should be. And so if you're in a situation like this, which I have, it's been one of my own evolutionary lessons in my life, is to understand that whenever I am aware and I am only attached to the truth of what is occurring and not some hope or expectation or potential of what could happen, I then get to make a correct judgment call about what to do. And if I really love someone and I feel like me continuing to give the energy that I've given, or to continue to play my position in the relationship, is not only going to hinder my growth, but it will hinder theirs. There have been times in my life where I've had to give this supreme form of giving, where really I'm appearing not to give. I'm saying I'm no longer willing to play this role. I'm no longer willing to put this amount of energy into this, because the truth of what is occurring is not aligning. It's not an equal exchange. And so there have been times where I've had to walk away from certain relationships because it's not based in equality. And this really reflects in Venus and Leo retrograde. Throughout this 6-week period, we are going to be re-experiencing relational dynamics as a way to have personal growth on an inner level, and to foster a healthier relationship with ourselves. And also old dynamics can be brought up where we are confronted with needing to, in a very Leonian way, have self-respect and self-dignity and self-love. And so there can be instances where we are not only confronted with the truth, but there are lessons in needing to honor the truth and to surrender to it as a way to create balance and harmony in our lives where imbalances have occurred. So Venus is also in a last quarter sextile to the South Node in Libra. And this really reflects the need to honor our state of becoming, which is this Leonian phenomenon. It's goes with all the fire signs because it's about self-actualization. And so it's, how are you going to self-actualize? By honoring yourself and honoring your own values, and who do you want in your life, and what's working and what's not working in your relationships, and how do you have self-respect and self-dignity. And so we are going to be having instances where we need to tap into this self-love and to recover it for some of us, and to recover our inner voice, especially with Libra, the lunar south node in Libra. Oftentimes, this can be the need to throw off the voices and opinions of others as a way to reclaim that self-love and self-respect. And it's in a sextile, which means that it can really be easily integrated if we do the work. It doesn't always mean that it's going to be comfortable or happy, but it's where one can feel honorable. And it's where we can pull in Pluto and Capricorn, which is really about fostering this autonomy and inner natural authority. It's not an authority that wants to overpower. It's an authority that steps outside of the status quo of the dynamics and can actually be a natural leader for other people to see that it can be done. And Venus is also in a first quarter trine with the North Node in Aries, which is ruled by Mars and Virgo. And so this can be where things are at an evolutionary standstill. And it reflects this Pluto square the nodes dynamic with the recovery or the resolution as the focus of the South Node in Libra. So what I mean by this is Venus in a first quarter trine to the North Node means that things have come to an evolutionary standstill. We might not be able to be we might not be able to self-actualize if we don't go back and reflect on the dynamics and the imbalances that have occurred. And we might not be able to really own our own natural leadership, North Node in Aries, if we can fake it, or we can think that we are, but there's really this need to first integrate the lessons of the Libra South Node and to creatively and self-actualize through understanding self-love and self-respect and self-dignity, and to evolve into a state of love for ourselves, because it will project that out and it will call in the people who that are really meant to be in our lives right now. And it helps to create the balance. And just remember that there's still these 29 or anaretic degrees. This is like, you can't cross the threshold until you do the work that is necessary to culminate 29. It's interesting as well because Pluto is ruled by, let me backtrack before I get into that. With the North Node being ruled by Mars and Virgo, and Mercury about to enter the sign of Virgo on the 28th, a lot of us can be experiencing where we've denied things or had self-denial. So that can look like making excuses for things for ourselves to not do the thing that we need to do, or only seeing the potential instead of the truth, which is a form of self-denial, or making excuses for others, which is an act of denying oneself as well. And that is why there needs to be this focus on looking at and reflecting on all of the imbalances in order to self-actualize and to permit self-love by honoring that truth. For others, this can be a time of, like, if we're in balanced and co-equal relationships with Mars and Virgo, this can be a time where we're learning how to really be independent in our relationships and to create a secure attachment. So Pluto being ruled by Saturn retrograde in the sign of Pisces and opposing Mars and Virgo we can be looking at the need to really exhaust habituations and emotional dynamics and to purge and purify them that revolve around the structure of our reality and how we've structured it in regard to our ideals that have been conditioned. And that's another reason why a lot of relational things can be coming up for people right now, because they can be confronted with their own ideals instead of the actual truth. We all want perfection, right? We've all been conditioned to think this in some type of way. Even if it wasn't our family, society really, you know, conditions us around perfection in relationships. And it's interesting because codependency and enmeshment is really looked at the ideal image. If yes, we know that it's not okay because psychology tells us that, more traditional psychology. And if you've experienced it, you definitely know that as well. But if you look at music or the media or Facebook or any type of social media or the types of, movies that we watch, we have this ideal image of these two couples being together, doing everything together all the time. And that really doesn't permit autonomy. And so we can be faced with ideals around that, or ideals around marriage or friendships. And there's this need to culminate these as they surface and to not make excuses, because that's where the imbalance can be created. Seeing as Mars is opposing Saturn and it's in the sign of Virgo and ruled by Mercury in the sign of Leo at this point in time until the 28th. And so to really be able to learn how to self-actualize, we can't do Virgo in a distorted way and deny ourselves our self-love. Leo, we have to be willing to confront the truth and our ideals and to really dissolve these old structures and to bring in more natural ways of being in partnership or in relationship with ourselves as a way to learn how to dance on the top of that bell curve of evolution, right? Instead of working against it, to go with it. And to remember that there's a lesson this week in that supreme form of giving. And it's a supreme form of love, which is, Neptune can really be just this utter compassion for people. And so there's a lot that can happen this week where we can have self-forgiveness of where we've denied ourselves in the past and how we can take responsibility for our part and imbalances that have been created, but also to be able to forgive another because we can have compassion for where they're at on an evolutionary level, or understanding that maybe their conditioning is getting in the way of them seeing the truth or experiencing the truth as it's occurring as well. Mercury is going to be in a conjunction with Venus right before it passes over and enters into the sign of Virgo on the 28th. And it is going to be square Uranus in the sign of Taurus, which is ruled by that Venus. And so as it's continuing to move closer and closer to Venus, it's this culmination of how we've learned to love ourselves in the past and the need to make a new choice as to how to do that. And with the square to Uranus, there is a great gift of whatever information that you receive through the awareness of being objective about the emotional dynamics that are occurring for each one of us on a unique level. We can then follow that through with action. And as Mercury passes over Venus into a new phase conjunction, we can start this new cycle of self-love. And as Mercury enters the sign of Virgo, to remember not to deny ourselves and do the distorted Virgo, but to take things step by step. And as choices are presented to us, we can do what's right in front of us, to not think about the future so much, but to really just take what's in front of us and to take the necessary steps without denying ourselves. So that way we can not only culminate prior dynamics, but we can really engage in self-love and self-honor and self-dignity and self-respect. Jupiter is moving into a trine with Mars, and Jupiter is also in the sign of Taurus and ruled by Venus retrograde. And so there's this need to really be able to listen to oneself and our intuition and our inner voice about our values and to apply them to life in a day-by-day, step-by-step way that creates healthier habits within our relationship to self and with others. So that way we are really drawing in healing qualities of honoring the inner voice, especially if you're someone who's noticed that they've lost that from being around people or have lost sight of who they are, their own values, because you're recovering from a relationship that might have been toxic. Or also, this can be people who have just been going out a lot and hanging out and are needing to retreat in order to integrate what they've been learning through their relationships, the counterpoint of that, of the comparison and the contrast. And so it's really about honoring the inner voice and the inner intuition as to when to go out and when to retreat, and what are the necessary steps that it takes to continue to harmonize with life, to do things in a practical way, and to self-improve and self-refine as we're in this evolutionary juncture. The other thing I wanted to mention is Chiron is stationed retrograde this week, and it is ruled by Mars and Virgo. And so Chiron retrograde is also in a trine to this Venus in Leo, and there can be a lot of old wounds with all of this cardinal energy coming up that surface around our attachment styles. Because with Pluto and Capricorn ruled by Saturn and Pisces, we're wanting to dissolve man-made constructs and laws and really embrace natural law right now as a way to start a brand new evolutionary cycle, and also to recover our own inner sovereignty, our own inner authority. Or if we have that, to be able to integrate more wisdom revolving around what wave of evolution you're in right now. Because this might not be so heavy for a lot of people, but from what I've seen, there can be a lot of heavy energy. There's also people I see who are starting relationships who are already abandoning themselves, and coming into the awareness of that. I've had a few clients who have talked about how they are seeing the patterns of this. And so it goes back to, learning how to dance on top of that bell curve and not sway too much. And it's through looking at our distribution of our patterns within relationships, right? But with Chiron retrograde in the sign of Aries, we are looking at wounds around where we need more self-leadership, how to induct that warrior spirit, the courage to do things. And that means we're going to have to take a look at our conditioning revolving around our wounding as it surfaced that has affected how we structure our relationships. And also, what are our attachment styles? How were you conditioned to have attachment with people? Was it secure? Is it avoidant? Is it anxious? It's all of these different dynamics that are wanting to surface so that way we can have the awareness around it. And with Jupiter and Uranus and Taurus ruled by this Venus retrograde, there's a lot of love and self-love that can be recovered through choosing to step into that fracture and to feel what is coming up. And I say this all the time, we can't deny our emotions. You have to feel it to heal it. You have got to be able to understand your emotions and to dive into those depths, because that is how we evolve. We can't evolve just through analyzing. We have to be able to feel what is coming up and to re-enter that fracture. And Chiron retrograde for the next few months is definitely wanting us to look at how we have experienced our wounds regarding our self-leadership and our courage. And with it being ruled by Mars and Virgo, there can be this holistic approach to how we approach or change our awareness around our wound. That way healing can be permitted. And through our awareness of how our conditioning really impacted our wounds and our trauma, especially from early childhood, which is what we choose to come into because we're really picking up where we left off of on a prior life, in a prior lifetime. In our prior lifetime, we are, as we are understanding where this comes from and the why of it, we can take the practical approaches to heal this. For some, this could be getting into meditation to clear the mind, to have a more secure attachment, to release anxious attachment. For others, this can be looking at the distortions of denying oneself or avoiding talking about emotional dynamics out of fear. Or feeling oppressed in a family system that you never had a voice in. All of these things can be coming up for each one of us as a way to do this Pluto square the nodes work in order to start the brand new cycle that each one of us is really wanting to start right now. And Chiron being trine Venus retrograde really speaks to learning about how we can change our awareness around our wounds so we don't continue to project onto others old dynamics, or we don't allow others to project onto us. And so it's really helping us to heal this through this Venusian and Leo self-love, and helping us to be in this state of becoming and to honor that and to self-actualize through that, through understanding, what do I really value? What is really important? What do I really need? And with Jupiter and Uranus and Taurus, we really have this propensity, especially with, Pluto also being in Capricorn, to really be able to meet our own needs. There's something really spiritual about understanding what can be considered really messy about our emotional dynamics. It's where we actually spiritualize oftentimes, is through understanding how we feel and our emotions, and through doing that, gaining inner security, inner emotional security, because that actually helps bring us closer to something much larger than us that we're a part of. And we still have this energy in Taurus that says to continue to work on our relationship to ourselves. And with Uranus there, as we do this and we create more self-love, we'll continue to change the vibration of our soul and really call in our tribe, Uranus, our community. And it will help bring levity and equality and balance and harmony within our relationships. The last thing I wanted to say about this week is Pluto is in conjunct Venus. And so if you are someone who is really needing to understand your own natural authority and to practice self-love, there can be things that come up this week where you have to make a correct judgment call regarding your relationships. And this can be where one really gets to realign and rebalance oneself by being their own inner authority and maybe doing something that feels really scary for them. For others, this can be I need to take accountability and authority of how I want to self-actualize right now in an independent way. So a lot of choices can be coming up this week. Pluto will in conjunct Mercury. That's about choice making. And Pluto in conjunct Venus is about a rebalance and a realignment and a self-readjustment around being one's own inner authority in whatever capacity is being presented to you. But it's really about being in this state of becoming of self-love and self-actualization and really wanting to liberate from prior dynamics through reflecting on them and gaining even more wisdom for self-mastery and self-leadership and self-autonomy and an inner authority that promotes an inner emotional validation and security that quite a few of us haven't really ever felt before. But there is going to be, for a lot of us, especially if you have things in the cardinal signs or in the fixed signs, there can be a lot coming up around making a correct judgment call in regards to your relationship to yourself or with another, and to make a choice. And from that choice, we get to learn more. And sometimes it's, not making a choice is a choice. And sometimes to make a choice than what we've done differently before feels really terrifying. And so with this astrology, with Neptune being the ruler of Saturn and Pisces, and also the trine between, Neptune and the sun in Leo, all you have to have is a sincere intention behind your actions, and you can have faith in the outcome. It will help to integrate the sun, our state of becoming, and a way to self-actualize through being compassionate with oneself and loving with oneself. And this is where the rubber meets the road, as one of my friends says. It's either evolve or leave. If you're in a relationship that's not working, whether that be work or friends, family, this is kind of I'm just gonna say it because it's Plutonian, it's the shit or get off the pot moment. Like, are we going to make excuses, or are we going to make a judgment call? Are we going to act in self-honor and self-dignity, or are we going to continue to deny ourselves? This week can really bring up all of this. And for others, especially with the South Node in Libra, old love can be coming in, old friendships, maybe family members you haven't talked to in a while, and it can be wanting to reveal imbalances that we weren't aware of. And so to remember that Uranus is in Taurus, and to maintain our objective awareness about this, that we're in a state of becoming, of learning balance right now on a collective level. And this means that when we do that, it helps us prevent crisis later on, because we are really honoring the inner voice. And so continue to do this, and remember that things are going to come up for a lot of us. There's a lot of anaretic degrees, there's a lot of inconjuncts that are happening, and there's Pluto square the nodes. So I want all of us to be gentle with ourselves. I want all of us to know that we are our own natural authority, and that when we maintain boundaries, meaning that I'm being vulnerable and I'm telling you how I feel, and it's not a way to control someone, it's a way to be vulnerable in order to create safety we get to learn if that person respects us or not. And the boundary lies within the one who creates it. And it's very important to remember that during this time. Boundaries are not for control or to try to see if something else works. It's about, I love and I respect myself. And this is how I'm feeling, and I'm uncomfortable with this, or this is what I need. And out of a relationship, if it's going to be equal. And if that doesn't happen, the boundary lies in the one who creates it. And in true Pluto and Capricorn fashion, you have to be your own inner authority. You are the one who maintains the boundary. It means that a choice has to be made. Do I stay in a situation where someone's not respecting how I feel or is able to listen to where I come from, or it runs the gamut? Or do I say, I am enough and I've got this, and it might be scary, but I respect and I love myself and I know my worth, and I'm not going to make excuses, and I'm only going to be attached to the truth that is occurring. And so I just want us to really remember this so that way we can continue to evolve and to learn how to harmonize with life instead of teetering to one side or the other. And as we do this, as we do this Pluto work with the South Node and this Venusian work, it's naturally going to pull in as we come into awareness of the imbalances, as we make choices, as we make judgment calls that are correct, and we have self-love and self-respect. It will naturally pull in that North Node of Aries, and the healing of self-leadership will happen. And we can experience our independence and freedom within our relationships in a co-equal way that really creates the balance and harmony that we all wish to have. So look at our values, look at our needs, meet ourselves where we're at, look at if we're expecting things from other people or if we're able to do it. And remember that the boundary lies in the one who creates it. And I hope you all have a really beautiful week. This can be hard for a lot of people, but it's also really beautiful because so much growth can happen right now. And you can end up coming out of this on the other side as a whole new person who attracts the people into your life, friends, your new family that come from your friends, partners, work, all of that, by just being willing to do this inner work and to not deny ourselves of it. And to remember to not be attached to an outcome, but only the truth as it's presented to us. I hope everyone has a beautiful week, and I will see you next week.